The new Super 35 sensor that Canon have introduced with the C300 Mark III is quite a big step up from other S35 sensors that they have created before. From the body and the flexibility that gives us in terms of the expansion packs and the interchangeable mount, to the sensor with its increased dynamic range for tackling scenes that possibly we couldn't have tackled or captured faithfully before, I can get more out of this camera. My money goes further. It's as simple as that from a business standpoint. From a creative point of view, it's unquestionably unlocking more creative avenues for us as filmmakers.
XS Wireless Digital is the perfect wireless audio solution for content creators and filmmakers. Thanks to a 2.4 GHz transmission, XS Wireless Digital is
Hello everyone, welcome to Pro AV Live. Thank you very much for joining me today. A bit of an early one for us compared to the times we normally stream today. That is for one very simple reason, and that is because both of my guests are well over on the other side of the pond. Joining us from Australia, we have Dan and Eamon from BirdDog. Good morning or good evening to you guys. How are you both?
Doing great, thanks Carl. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedules to join us for this. I really, really do appreciate it, and I'm sure our audience do too. It's worth pointing out for our audience, this is going to be a very casual discussion, just overall about BirdDog as a whole, where you guys came from, what you do, what you try and keep in mind when you're designing products, all of that sort of stuff. The idea here is to get a big picture look at the brand as a whole and who you guys are. So if you guys watching it at home have any questions at all, just leave them down in the chat and we will bring them up as we go if they're relevant to what we're talking about, or I will save them to the end. So let's start by you guys both introducing yourself, shall we? Dan, do you want to go first?
Let's go for it, Carl. So I'm Dan. I'm the first half of the founders of BirdDog. We actually came about through basically the industry that we've worked in for a long time. In fact, Eamon and I have known each other since we were teenagers. We worked at various different places along the way, but always within the media industry. My background includes working at Avid for quite some time, and then more recently, Eamon and I started up a company which is called Blonde Robot, and they're a distributor for a whole bunch of products. And one of those was NewTek, and you can start to see we're focusing in on how this NDI story came about and ultimately how BirdDog came about. So Eamon and I started up Blonde Robot, I should say, and we're distributing NewTek products, and we heard about NDI at the start there, and that really was a catalyst for getting into BirdDog and really all the products that we've come from there. That's kind of my background and a brief bit on Eamon's. Eamon, did you want to talk a bit about yourself as well?
Yeah, sure. So I've sort of always been in the video industry, mainly on the product sales and marketing side. As Dan said, we've known each other since we were 18, so only 5 or 6 years ago. No, more like 14 or 15 or something. Yeah, we're kind of aging ourselves there. So that's how long Dan and I have known each other. And as this NDI protocol came out and we heard about it from NewTek, Dan and I just were having a very casual conversation about what it meant to the industry and things like that. And Dan had this crazy idea for our first product, and he came in and he brought it into the office, a drawing of this guy, our very first product. And I said, "You're crazy if you think we're going to build hardware. We're a product distributor." So, but yeah, he convinced us to have a go, and the rest is sort of history, or starting to become history.
For your first product, you did quite a good job on that hardware. So there's a couple of things that I really want to unpick. The first one, we've got to talk about the names a little bit. I mean, you must get asked this so many times. But first up, you mentioned Blonde Robot, and then you turned that into BirdDog. Where do these names come from? What's going on here?
All right, Eamon, you start with Blonde Robot, and then I'll go BirdDog. So.
Yeah, so I can claim Blonde Robot, but I can't claim BirdDog. Blonde Robot is a distributor, so they don't actually do any customer-facing things. They deal with suppliers and then with a reseller such as Pro AV. So there's no reason to have a serious name. So you can be called anything. So I decided that Blonde Robot was a funny name and people would remember it. And we kind of didn't really expect that company to be successful as it was either. So as the time went on, it became. Maybe we should have called it something a bit more serious. But yeah, that's the Blonde Robot story.
I quite like casual names. They get, especially business to business, like you say, with distributor, you don't have to be remembered by customers. You've just got to be remembered by all of us boring salespeople. And a good catchy casual name like that makes a lot of sense. So what about BirdDog then, Dan?
Yeah, so I think memorable is what it's all about. So we certainly didn't learn about silly names when we started up with Blonde Robot. But BirdDog, it's difficult naming a company, of course, like trying to make something that is memorable. But this day and age, trying to find a company that doesn't exist as far as for URLs and websites, branding and all that kind of thing. We came up with BirdDog really because, not that we're hunters, but if you are a hunter, your BirdDog is your assistant. And we sort of thought that what we're creating is an assistant for for video production.
Okay.
So it's like your sidekick, your faithful sidekick, that kind of thing. So your bird dog in your production is the bird dogs that we create these days. So that's kind of where it came from. So, yeah. But the story with that is, yeah, go for it, Eamon.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, Dan sent the dictionary definition of a bird dog around the office, and to the 2 or 3 of us that were sort of relevant at the time. And I saw it and I thought, yeah, it's okay, but it seems a bit crazy to call your company Bird Dog. And I started playing around with logo ideas and put a dog's head on a bird's body. And I sent it back to Dan, and just as a joke, really, and said, if we can do this with the logo, then I'm in. And Dan said, okay, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's go for
Fair enough. Called your bluff there, didn't we? And I've just zoomed in on my laptop to the corner of your website so that people can see that Bird Dog logo. I can't get it much bigger than that, unfortunately. But that's what we're talking about. That lovely.
But yeah, it seems to have worked quite. Yeah, it seems to have worked quite well. I remember one of the NABs, one of the very first early NABs. I think we only had one product at the time, and NDI was sort of a bit of a buzz kind of thing that people were talking about. And I was actually just walking by these 2 gentlemen, and one of them was saying, "This is great, but how am I going to get this? How am I going to get my cameras to talk to my TriCaster via NDI?" And someone's just like, "You just got to bird dog your camera." And I was like, hang on, we've already become Kleenex or something like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, it kind of works.
Excellent. I mean, like we said, it is memorable. That's what it all comes down to, is memorable. So the other thing that sprung up immediately when you were talking there was, you mentioned that NDI was really that starting catalyst for you. I mean, it still is. You don't make any products, I don't think, do you, other than maybe the wall mounts and stuff like that are not related to NDI? Am I right in that?
Yeah, look, all of our products are NDI enabled, so it really was the catalyst for the business. And in fact, I think we are the only business out there that makes hardware that sprung up because of NDI.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, we were the first company to make any hardware with NDI as well. So we kind of got really excited about the technology. And when NDI pre-version 1 was around, it was a great way of sending video from one computer to another. And the history of NDI goes right back to TriCasters with their virtual video inputs, and the extension of that and what NewTek did in enabling NDI to be available for other products. Essentially just led us to think that, this thing needs to be in a piece of hardware. It needs to be closer to the camera. It needs to be closer to a screen. And that's kind of the catalyst for where we went, let's put it into a small box. How hard could making hardware be? So.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I think that leads into what actually the sort of the foundation of the whole company is, right, Dan? The silicon chip implementation of NDI. Perhaps you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So when we first started out, we thought it was a great idea. Let's make it into a small piece of hardware that can be mounted onto a camera, a converter that can take video signals in and make that NDI. It became very apparent pretty quickly that to do that we needed to make our own custom silicon. You can't really do a small device that's low power, low heat, and relatively low cost that can produce NDI with all sorts of fancy processing. So we designed our boards from the ground up, and we call that our silicon. So essentially all the processing that we do when we take in the signals from our cameras or from a converter and put it into NDI, that's all done on a chip that we've designed from the ground up that allows us to do it in ultimate high quality and the lowest latency possible. And that's really kind of been the underpinnings of all of our products from there, and that's allowed us to really grow out the product range over the last 5 years. And funnily enough, it's up to NDI 5 now, and it's enabling even more products. So.
Yeah, I mean, the chipset is such an important part of it, isn't it? Because that is the heart of your company, I guess, isn't it? Is that chipset which you then...
It's actually this little guy here. So this little board that we make, it's about half the size of a business card. And that actually, I'll put it back up again, that is kind of all of our technology focused into a little board, and that can go into all of our products. It's featured in our cameras, in our converters, and it has all of the smarts to take video in, process it, and move it around. And that really is the total of our engineering that gets distilled into this little board that allows all that to happen.
Fascinating. It's a really interesting way to think about your products, really, is they are all NDI converters in different forms. Your cameras are NDI converters with a camera attached to them, and all the rest of it. It's a very interesting way to think about it. Right at the beginning, what was it about NDI that turned you from distributor into manufacturer? What was it about that new technology which made you jump in so wholeheartedly, you know? I mean, you guys
Yeah,
were
look,
really into it.
we did. We're right into it. I think probably to go back even further, Eamon and I are fortunate enough to be of the age that we are, that we've been through a number of different technology shifts from analog video to digital to HD and 4K and beyond. And what we knew was going to happen is this IP transition for live video. And whilst video streaming's been around for a long time now, that ultra low latency live video just wasn't there, just owing to the amount of resources that was needed on computer networks and just the infrastructure required to do that. When we saw NDI, it kind of fits in that sweet spot where you've got the quality that people are looking for in right up to broadcast quality. It's got the latency that allows it to be live, but it's really network friendly. It can run on gigabit Ethernet, and if you're using various other formats around the place, you can stream it over the internet with with our cloud platform and things like that. But ultimately, it's that flexibility of being ultra low latency and high quality, but network friendly. And as soon as we saw that, Eamon and I were like, "This is it. This is what's going to change how people are making live production."
I like it when you call it the Goldilocks format, Dan, because it's kind of just right.
I didn't this time, but yeah.
Excellent. NDI, that could be their new new tagline, couldn't it? NDI, like the perfect cup of porridge.
That's it.
So, do you think NDI has changed very much, really, from back then when you first started it to now? You know, I mean, when was NDI first announced? How many years has it been now?
Well, it's been available for 5 years, so it must be coming up to 5.5 or so, nearly 6 from when it was announced. Okay. I think it might have been IBC 6 years ago, so almost. So
I've come into the whole NDI picture. I mean, NDI is what I'm using now for people at home. I've got a TriCaster 2 Elite. We've got a camera here being converted into NDI, fed into the TriCaster, and both of you are coming over Skype. My laptop's coming in over NDI. You know, it's all powered by NDI. But I've started my journey with NDI very recently. You know, only a couple of years ago, whereas you guys have been there from the start. So, do you think it's changed much? Where are we now compared to where we were then?
Yeah, look, I think it's been a fun journey, and it has changed a lot in some ways, but not a lot in others. If you think about the premise of what NDI tried to deliver or attempted to deliver right at the start, it hit it out of the park from the word go. It was a real-time format that was network friendly, easy to deploy. If you know how to use a web browser, you can use NDI. Is pretty much, I think that was a tagline at one point along the way. So in a lot of ways, that's been retained, and that's all the good stuff that comes with NDI. That it's really easy and it works. What's really been honed in over the years is the performance, the scalability of how NDI can work, but also the flexibility. And if you look at, we're coming in off Skype. Skype was the first platform for video conferencing that supported NDI, but it's now in Teams, it's in Zoom. There's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of applications out there for all sorts of different creative purposes that have come along the way. And that's owing a lot to the way that software SDK thing works, where people can employ NDI into pretty much any video application they like. And I think they've done a lot of work in making that as flexible as possible. From our perspective, what we've been able to do is really scale up as far as the resolution we can support, frame rates, the products it can fit in. But as a platform, that flexibility as far as working with lots of different software, being more friendly with networks, the NDI version 5 goes a long way with its network friendliness, being able to deploy it over the internet or working with more sketchy network connections for connecting between campuses and things like that. So from a technical level, there's been a lot of things changed, but really from a fundamentals, I think they got it right at the start, and they've just been building on that with extra tool sets and extra functionality.
I mean, do you think it's...
one of the things... Sorry, Carl.
No, you go.
Oh, I was going to say, one of the things I found interesting with the NDI journey is, at the very first IBC, there was sort of, new tech talking about it. The next IBC, there was sort of new tech and, BirdDog had popped up and maybe a couple of other software manufacturers. And it's just grown out. And I think if we were allowed to go to trade shows this year, I would say something like 90% of the stands would have some kind of NDI story. And that, to me, has been really amazing to watch. And you hear Dr. Andrew Cross, the inventor of NDI, and a shout out to Dr. Andrew. talk about NDI, and if you had have asked him 4 years ago who's using NDI, he probably could have told you every single person. But now, if you ask him who's using NDI, it's just impossible. Like, there's digital signage in Times Square, there's live streamers, high schools, there's corporate people using NDI to send things around onto TV screens and things like that. So it's really just grown so fast in the last, particularly in the last 3 years.
Grown hugely. Do you think it's become easier to communicate what it is?
I think so. I think people are really getting the idea of video over IP a lot more in a live sense. And what we've seen, I really think the last 12 months or probably 18 months, that the understanding and the people being able to place what they can use NDI for has come a long way. And it's just kind of exploded into AV markets, into education, corporate streaming, and those kind of industries where potentially video was a bit of a dark art and they might employ a small team to make a video production. They're able to kind of work with NDI in a small way and understand how it works and then really shape it into what they want from their communications. And I think, that side of things the understanding of NDI has come a long way from that as far as how people are able to deploy it and use it.
Absolutely. So we've had a question from Morton about SRT. I mean, we've obviously talked about NDI a lot, and it's what you guys have built your entire company on, but it's far from being the only video over IP format out there, and we have it. I suppose it's fairly unique in terms of it tries to sort of be a jack of all trades IP format. It tries to do the whole process, whereas something like SRT is much more focused down on a very specific thing. But what are all of your thoughts on SRT specifically and on any other IP formats as well?
Yeah, it should be said actually that we actually support SRT in our cloud platform. So we do employ that quite extensively for getting video over the internet. And I think potentially with NDI5 that the lines are blurred between where you would sort of categorically say you'd use NDI and where you'd use SRT, for example. NDI really comes back to that premise of being ultra low latency and really high quality. It's designed to be a replacement for an SDI cable or an HDMI cable in a facility. And what SRT tries to do is replace effectively a satellite or a microwave link where you're going beyond your building from one place to another. And that's going to keep it secure, it's going to make it available from one place to another and keep that stream looking good, so it makes sure the quality's there. The issue you've got with going over the internet though is you've got no control over what happens, and so SRT does a lot of that reliability adjustments to make sure that your pictures are looking good, and that can sometimes be at the cost of latency. So you wouldn't necessarily employ SRT in your building to get video from one place to another, but certainly going outside of your building it works really well. What's happened more recently with NDI5 is there's now the NDI Bridge application which is coming, which actually does a similar job. It's designed really for a different set of purposes, but it does allow you to extend NDI beyond your walls, so to speak, as well. But from our point of view, video over IP is absolutely the way of the future. And whilst our business is 100% rooted and based with NDI, there is a lot of other technologies that we employ. SRT is one of them. We've actually got Dante support for audio as well in software, and soon to come in the hardware as well. So as far as we're concerned, we love IP-based production. And NDI absolutely is the core of that. But there's certainly other areas where formats can cross over. So.
Makes a lot of sense. Do you think there is a future where we'll see SRT in more hardware from you guys? I mean, in terms of the cameras, for example?
Look, I think, there's, without sort of talking too much about future, we don't like to get people too excited about new things that are coming because, that creates demand for things that don't exist yet. But certainly interconnection is absolutely the way of the future. So going and joining up productions in various different ways is absolutely where our sort of core values are. And if you like, we kind of see our devices as edge devices. We create or we deliver media from either from a camera or to a screen, and so those edge devices are becoming spread out further and further. So certainly I would look at that space, but I don't really have too much to talk about with that at the moment. So.
Makes sense. Yeah. What else about NDI5 is exciting for you guys? I mean, it's such a maybe it's worth actually us just in case anyone has missed NDI5. I imagine most people watching this have seen some of the news on it. But what bits on it are getting you guys quite excited?
So I'm just going to talk just very briefly. I think one of the biggest things is the way the SDK works. It is able to work in more devices, and so the ARM support is something that's really exciting. And I'll let Eamon talk. I'm conscious I've been talking a bit, but I'll let Eamon talk about Play, which is our new device, which is employing that.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, I looked around and tried to find one, but I don't have one here. Sorry, but Play is tiny. It's basically an Apple TV, but for NDI is the easiest way to describe it. It's an ARM-based device, so it's lower cost, and it comes in at like $149 US. And basically it'll play either local NDI off your network, and if you pair it up with our new Cloud Connect apps as well, then it can connect to NDI sources from pretty much anywhere in the world.
So I think I pulled it up on our website. It's this little device.
Yep.
Yeah, we're taking pre-orders now, and we're not too far away from shipping. But yeah, sorry, Dan, you were going to say?
No, that's okay. I was going to say, so just to back up a little bit, ARM is the processors that you have in mobile phones and in more recently in things like the Apple M1 processor, an ARM-based one as well. So the extension of using NDI on those type of processors means effectively it's available for a huge amount more devices. So you'll see that there's more applications come for mobile devices that work with ARM that now support NDI, and that will be Apple, Android, and various other embedded devices. So I think, really, if we think NDI has exploded over the last year, with NDI5, I think we'll see that's just going to go even further as far as the places you'll find it and the devices you'll find it in. So I think that's one of the really exciting things with NDI5. Some other important parts are the audio side of things. So within NDI5, we now have a much richer audio support. And that really brings in, if you look at a production, certainly in a live environment, where we sit, we've got our cameras and our converters that can do ultra low latency conversion of video into NDI and send it around a building. Works really great for going up onto big screens and things like that. But there's a massive component of a production that's audio. And right now that's kind of almost been exclusive. You'd use some other device, whether it's just a regular digital connection or whether it's something some other format. But with NDI version 5, there's a lot more rich support for audio in digital audio workstations and things. So you'll find there's a lot more fully integrated productions that can all live on NDI, and it gives you some great abilities to then route different sources of audio to different destinations for program outputs and things like that. So you'll see a lot more happening on audio with NDI 5. Probably another thing that's exciting is, for me, I mentioned very briefly that my background, I worked at Avid. That was for 10 years. So post-production, I've got quite a lot of experience with. And Apple Final Cut Pro now supports NDI natively output as well. So it supports it with Adobe CC or Adobe Creative Cloud. It also supports Avid and now Final Cut Pro. So basically, these post-production workflows are now being dragged into the NDI world as well. That's great for screenings, client screenings, for program monitors or confidence monitors. But ultimately, where we see this being really exciting is taking that NDI output and then sharing that over the internet to other devices around the place to be able to do remote screenings and remote over-the-shoulder edits and things. Yeah. So I think, there's a lot of cool stuff coming with NDI 5, and that really helps enable it.
I think the over-the-shoulder edits is something that a lot of our customers would be very interested in just by having native NDI support in those software, and then pair it with an NDI decoder like one of your products, and they can just be sent anywhere very cheaply. They're very small and lightweight, so couriering them isn't no expense really much at all. Get them to anywhere in the world where your clients are, and they can plug it in and very quickly and easily see your edit. I mean, that it's much harder to do that now than it would be then.
Yeah. So absolutely. So part of our launch of the Play device is also the Cloud Connect platform, which is an NDI-enabled delivery platform, which allows you can use a phone or an iPad or one of our Play devices, of course. To receive your NDI stream anywhere in the world, and it can be as low as 2 frames of latency. So it's awesome for all sorts of monitoring, whether that's a multi-viewer for a live production or whether it's an over-the-shoulder edit. So we think. Yeah, NDI really becomes this core of being able to then share out media to different places. And for BirdDog, we see that as it's where we love sitting is on the cameras, on the converters for going in and out, and then the software to be able to share that out as well. And ultimately you can put in your whatever creative tool you choose in the middle, whether that's a nonlinear edit system, whether it's a TriCaster, whether it's a staging system. You bring your own creativity. We create the bits around the edge to make it all happen.
Excellent. And while we're on NDI5, before we move on, well, let's move on in a bit to talk about maybe the product range. But while we're on NDI5, I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on the Genlock and that side of things as well, because it's something that I don't see a huge amount of people talking about with NDI5. I mean, there's a lot of attention, headline grabbing things in NDI5, so I can't say I necessarily blame them. But that seems like such a simple functionality, and to have part of NDI built in now that is going to make a big difference, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because if you look at... Oh, sorry, Eamon.
No, I was going to say, you talk about Genlock, I'll talk about the products.
Cool, yeah. Okay. You get the fun stuff. So Genlock, in a traditional sense for broadcasting, it's to get your sources in sync, to make sure that you can cut from one source to another without having any jitters or jolts. With NDI, that's kind of built into the way that the receivers work. So in some ways, you don't really need it. It can assist in a little bit with latency, but actually the more meaningful use of that Genlock is for the other side of things, for delivering video, to be able to synchronize various screens. So I think probably the most useful place that Genlock part of NDI in version 5 will be is for AV type purposes, for screening rooms or for multiple TVs in one place. So I see being able to synchronize your displays at the other end as actually being a really great purpose for Genlock, rather than necessarily synchronizing your cameras on the source side. So it's potentially a slightly different take on it because of the kind of natively digital nature of what NDI is. But definitely a very useful feature with NDI5.
I mean, it's nice to hear in some ways, because since we've been talking to customers about NDI, I mean, it's multi-camera stuff. Sync comes up pretty much every single conversation. And when people are new to video over IP and to NDI specifically, we do get an awful lot of but how do we know that it's going to be in sync? Can I put timecode through it and all this? Well, that's sort of built into the way, that's sort of what we've been saying, but to now have Genlock support and to hear people like you saying, actually, we were right all along, you don't really need it, I think will help people a lot with the trusting of the format, if that makes sense. We could use Genlock, but we don't need to.
Yeah, so it's just, I suppose, to go a little further with that, with all of your with any NDI source, if you're using the high bandwidth or full NDI that we use, every frame is delivered in its own right. So a frame of video is not associated with the next one. So it's called iframe as far as the codec is concerned. But each one of those frames actually has a timecode burnt into the data for that frame. So we know what that timecode is for that frame when you're receiving it at the other end. So certainly for syncing up afterwards, that data has always been available in there. So certainly for multi-camera edits and that kind of thing, it's really very mature from that point of view. But on the other side of things, being able to deliver in sync is a pretty interesting concept. So
makes a lot of sense. Okay, anything else you want to mention about NDI5 before we move on? I think we've covered it pretty comprehensively.
I think we're good, yeah.
I was just going to ask you if you want to talk about reliable UDP. That's sort of a bit of a sleeper feature, but it's pretty massive in the scheme of things.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah. So probably the one other thing is to thank NewTek and NDI for producing NDI5, because it's a lot of work and there's been a huge amount that's gone into that, and particularly Andrew Cross, who I talk with very regularly. I don't think he ever sleeps, but he's done an amazing job there, as his team. But reliable UDP actually, I think, is going to be a real game changer. When you're trying to deliver video across networks, it is a challenge to make sure it gets to the other end. And there's all sorts of different ways to get video across there, as far as what's called a network transport. And this new transport that's been enabled, which is reliable UDP, it means that if you're sending video locally, so you've got a camera, for example, going to a screen right next to you, and then you might want to send that camera directly across to another campus or another building that's got a fast connection, but it might have a different set of latency or some different properties. And reliable UDP can handle that without any issues at all, where if you try and use your typical network transports, it starts to get upset when you've got various different devices trying to receive video at the same time. And that really affects the ability to scale up And so what a reliable UDP does is allow us to really scale up the amount of sources or the amount of screens that are going to be receiving that NDI. It makes it a whole lot more reliable, as the name says, but also just makes it a lot easier to manage on a network. There's less work that needs to be done as far as setting up the network, and it gives you a much more reliable, smoother result. And it actually helps with latency as well. So it's a really cool new feature. It's not something that you necessarily enable or disable within NDI devices. It'll default to reliable UDP unless it's kind of told otherwise. So it's just a new benefit that comes with NDI5, and it makes effectively your NDI streams even more reliable.
Okay. We have had a question come in on the topic of Genlock before we move on, from Alimox, saying, wouldn't Genlock help syncing different off-site cameras ingested via NDI over the public internet? So when you're bringing in sources over internet, does Genlock help?
The architecture of Genlock within NDI doesn't sort of lend itself to that. So effectively what you have is a master NDI source that will then tell all of the other NDI devices to work at that rate. So when you're in one building, that's all good. But if you're outside of that building, you need to get that master clock across the internet. So you're going to get some delay there. So effectively that in that use case, it would blow out the purpose of having Genlock. But thankfully, with NDI, we've got timecodes. So within the devices, as long as you have your timecodes set to a common network time source, we can actually enable that, so it burns in those timecodes into the source. And effectively, that means that you can be recording anywhere in the world, and that timecode will still match.
Excellent.
So.
Okay, let's get on to, so if we bring up your website here, let's get on to some chat about the actual products that you guys make. So you split it into some fairly sort of broad categories here on the website. Should we sort of run through each one in turn, do you think, Eamon?
Yeah, if you like. It's interesting to note, I think it was 18 months ago we had 3 actual hardware products shipping, and yeah, you can see them all there now. It's been a crazy 18 months.
Yes. You've got more than 3 now.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, maybe start on the converters. That's sort of where we started. And yeah, this guy is our very first guy, and I think even on the website it says the one that started it all. This is our Studio NDI product, which as per Dan's vision was to become sort of like a camera back or your faithful assistant, right, for your camera. So it's got Tally on the front. One of the great things about NDI is it's got metadata built in, so the Tally just works without any configuration, as long as the system you're plugging into, like a TriCast or a vMix or something like that, Wirecast from Telestream, it just has Tally built in, so the Tally just lights up. It has obviously NDI and PoE. We've got SDI in and out, and HDMI in and out, and you can do a cross conversion as well. So basically all of the inputs and outputs are sort of live at the same time. So you can come in with an SDI camera and then loop that out to your HDMI monitor recorder, or just your HDMI monitor, send an SDI loop through back out to another device. So yeah, so it's sort of, I think this has got like 5 functions down one cable. So it's power, video, audio, Tally, and audio intercom. So yeah, on the front here we've got audio intercom as well. And so you can plug a headset in there, load up our audio intercom application, and you have a talk back for your camera operators as well.
Gotcha. So what separates this one still from the rest of the converters? So it's the SDI.
Mainly
right?
Mainly the SDI, although we do have other SDI products in the 4K family. But yeah, so mainly the SDI, the loop out, is the main function of this. One of the common things that we take through all of the products that we can is, some things like PoE, Tally, audio intercom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the studio product was the one that kind of started it off, and then we've really pushed out the whole product range. So the next one along was Mini. That was really designed for the HDMI only workplace. Eamon's the display.
The hand model.
Yes, the hand model. That's right. So Mini is designed really for people that don't have SDI and don't want to pay that premium for it. And it's actually led us into a really interesting path, which is it's a qualified product for Zoom installations, and it's been qualified with Zoom for quite some time, well before they supported NDI within the actual Zoom interface. And that's because it can be used for just AV distribution. So Zoom did a lot of testing and worked out that actually using NDI for AV distribution rather than kind of your typical HD-based T extenders and things like that actually gave them a lot of benefits, even though they weren't building NDI directly into their software at the time. So the Mini product has worked really well as just a video extender for a whole bunch of different purposes, whether it's for live production or whether it's for that AV kind of video conferencing systems. The more recent products that we've had, which
sorry, I was going to just say, interestingly though, this was our easiest product to make. All it required was a hacksaw.
I was going to say, holding them up like that really does just look like you've taken a saw to it.
Yeah.
I'm sure making hardware is just as simple as that, isn't it, guys?
Totally, yeah, that's exactly what we did. Yeah.
So moving on from there, you guys, so that both the Studio NDI and the Mini are 1080p converters, are they?
Yeah, correct. So they're encoders and decoders. Actually, the decode piece was something that we really got quite excited about. We've got a whole bunch of firsts that we sort of keep in our catalog, which is the first to be an NDI encoder, first NDI decoder. But actually, Eamon and I were sitting. It was actually when we were visiting one of the factories one time. We were sitting down looking at our products and all the rest, and we went, you know what? There's a lot more screens than there are cameras. We really need to get this decode thing working with NDI, and that's kind of where that came along for both the Studio and the Mini products, where that enabling of the decoding of NDI allows you to distribute. So that's where NDI sort of became a hardware-based distribution platform at that point, and we're the first people to be able to deliver that decoding in a piece of hardware. So all of the learnings that we had within those two products allowed us to then create our next generation, and we've got really two different flavors of those. There's the Flex range, which is designed for more compact and potentially lower budget productions as well. We have this is used very extensively in community groups, churches and corporates, as well as for internet streaming, where you might have a DSLR or something like that. It can do 4K encoding into NDI. These boxes are designed as either encoders or decoders, so you choose which model you like, and one will do encoding, one will do decoding. But they've got a great set of features as far as that Halo tally system, where you've got full 360-degree view of the tally lights. It's got audio intercom. It'll actually even integrate with an existing pan-tilt zoom camera. So if you've got an existing camera that's remotely controllable, you can plug a cable into the Flex, and that'll turn it into an NDI PTZ camera immediately. So it's a great little product that it's nice and small to be able to fit onto smaller rigs, like I mentioned, for things like DSLRs. And it fits at a price point that allows NDI to be put into a lot of other productions, and it's been a really popular product range. The backpack is a great little device that it can attach to the back of a monitor recorder, and it'll power it as well. So it not only is PoE being power over Ethernet, but it has enough power in there to power the device that you plug it into the battery plate. So it becomes a really neat solution to be able to not only power a monitor, for example, but also do your NDI encoding to be able to do audio intercom and everything all through one cable. So again, we're all about providing overall solutions for a production, and Flex really delivers, I think, in a lot of ways for a lot of people trying to simplify the kit that they want to take out into the field. It's great to just store it in a backpack, and it kind of gives you a lot of facilities. Eamon, do you want to talk about the 4K family, the big guys?
Sure, you're going to have to be the hand model, though. I don't have one here.
I've got one. There we go. So we can trade places.
Oh, there we go. Trading places. Yeah, so we built out the 4K Pro family, and these are sort of higher end products that have got a few extra features. So there's three versions. There's a HDMI input that has SDI loop out. There's an SDI input that has HDMI loop out, and then there's the quad, which is the one we're probably most proud of. It's a 4-channel box, and at the moment it's all in or all out, but soon in the future they'll all be independent channels, and it goes up to 4K P60. Plus, it's got a few extra things that we sort of learnt along the way listening to our customers, including an SFP plus cage, so you can do 10 gigabit directly out of the unit, which of course, if you've got 4 channels of 4K P60, you'd need 10 gigabit out of the unit, but it also means you can run fiber, SFP and things like that as well. So And we've included all the usual things: power over Ethernet, tele, audio intercom, and we actually also added an OLED on the side, so you can see the IP address, the frame rate, the resolution, and a few other things as well. So yeah, they're very complete units, and they're in the market now, shipping and available now.
So
I think the interesting thing with the SFP or running fiber connections, the interesting thing with that is if you're looking at sporting fields, you've got an Ethernet cable, you've got a maximum of 100 meters you can run with that. If it's motor racing or even if it's just kind of football, you very quickly reach 100 meters when you're trying to get a camera over the other side of the field. And so running a fiber cable, which Ethernet fiber cables are really quite low cost, it means you can run kilometers. So it becomes a great way of getting a remote camera in, where previously you'd either have to run a SMPTE fiber cable or you'd have to try and run a wireless link or something like that. You can just run a low cost cable and get that camera in right up at 4K.
Yeah. For our non-metric friends, 100 meters is about 300 feet, and kilometers is miles.
So apart from the quad, which has a fairly obvious sort of benefit of being able to do multiple things at once, with the HDMI and the 12G SDI versions of the 4K, I mean, there are obviously a bunch of improvements over the Flexes, but what do you think are the biggest things? What are people moving from or debating between going Flex and the bigger 4K models? What are people going to see the biggest difference in?
I would say it's more along that line of the camera back. So not only have you got an input, but you've also got an output as well. So if you're in an SDI world, you've got an SDI input and an SDI output, as well as a HDMI loop out. And vice versa on the HDMI. You've got HDMI in, HDMI loop out, as well as cross conversion to SDI. So they're more like a camera back. Plus you get those other nice things like the OLED. It's in an aluminum. What did I say? Aluminum for aluminium, aircraft grade aluminium case. And it has an SFP plus cage and a few other things like that. So they're a little bit, there's a few more professional level features. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they're designed for more rugged use, and probably the biggest difference is 4K 60 rather than 4K 30.
Aha.
So the Flex units are 4K 30 and they're HDMI only, and the 4K family or the Pro line it does up to 4K 60, and there's 12G SDI and multiple channels of that.
Gotcha.
Which probably leads us into the camera. Oh, we'll go play first.
I was just going to mention the play. We've already spoken about this very quickly, but I just thought, it would be interesting to see how this slots into the other converters, because it is a converter, right?
Yeah, it is. And so the idea with this is we wanted to make it as user-friendly as possible. So there's a very intuitive user interface. You can use, you can bring your own remote control. And it basically you can receive NDI from anywhere on the network and then play it out, including NDI HX, or you can connect it with BirdDog Cloud and bring in NDI from anywhere in the world.
So for people, I guess people in my situation right here, we've got a very small little studio built around NDI at its core, and say we've got displays that we want to show in another room or here in the studio or whatever, and we want to use an NDI decoder for that. What do you think are the big differences between choosing between the Play to do that, or a Flex, or the bigger 4K?
I'll answer if you like. So I think so I think the difference really is what you're wanting to use it for. The concept of Play is it's a low cost device that allows you to put video onto screens in a lot of different places. So if you're talking about a theatre, you might want to have a screen at the entrance hall, for example, and so you can just put a Flex unit behind there, and it's kind of an easy way to drop in various different places to get video. So we see that as being able to scale a lot more with your NDI sources as far as getting it delivered in different places. Where we see things like the Flex going really well is those more programmatic places. So in meeting spaces and things where you want to control it a lot more and maybe have it locked down so people can't use a remote control and mess around with it themselves. It's less of an interactive thing and more of a...
Easy is actually a drawback in some of those environments.
Yeah, it can be. Absolutely, yeah. So having a nice user interface invites people to mess around with it, and in permanent installs, that's not necessarily what you want. So Flex really fits in that bill there. It also, in a production environment, it's got the tally lights and talkback as intercom systems and all the rest. So it's designed to be part of a live production. And then going up to the higher end, the Pro line of the 4K products, that really is all about 12G or 4K 60. It's higher bit rates as far as you can go up to 10-bit in your encoding as well. So as far as the image quality, it will be higher if you've got a camera that's going to give you that source. And then from there, really, it's about the connectivity on there. It's got that, the fiber connectivity to run long runs. It's it's made out of an aluminium enclosure, so it's designed more of as a production piece of gear that you can put into, a kit that's going to go out into the field and all the rest. It's designed to be thrown around, although we don't encourage. It's designed to be thrown around the place, and it's a tough unit that's built really for everything you could want in a production. So that's kind of where we see the tier. So it's easy access, permanent installs, and then tough, rugged, top of the range.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Morton is asking, when will the Play actually be available? I mean, it's starting to ship fairly soon, right?
Yeah, look, I don't have an exact run of when it's going to be. As you probably may have heard around silicon supply, it's a bit challenging at the moment for various things. If you look at Ford, they had to stop making their F-150s over in the States for a while because of it, and that does sort of trickle down to all sorts of manufacturing. So there is potentially a few little delays just on the manufacturing side, but it's definitely still on track. So I don't have an exact date, but it's certainly all shaping up well. The performance is looking great, and we're really excited to bring out Play. So it will be out as soon as it possibly can. It's not at this stage looking like an extended long-term delay, but we just need to get the factory actually spinning up on it. So.
Makes sense. I think every manufacturer's in the same boat, to be quite honest. It's amazing how many things use those silicon chips.
It's a difficult time.
Yeah, it really is, yeah.
And before we move on from converters, Burry is also asking, any plans to update the studio converter, so I assume he means the original one there, to 4K and possibly support simultaneous encode and decode?
Yeah, so there's a few things there. One is the SDIs are actually hardwired to 3G SDI, so they actually can't physically accept a 4K input. And same with the HDMI, it's 1.4. So again, can't support 4K. So sorry, but no, that'll stay at 1080p 60.
And I guess a new hardware version effectively is the 4K ones you're already making, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, that's right. So effectively, the 4K replacement for a studio really is the Pro line of 4K products, and there's a modest jump up in price, but with that you get quite a lot of extra features. With that, you get not only the 4K support, but also fiber and OLED screens and next generation of hardware. So the other question, which I will answer sort of, is around whether it will do encoding and decoding simultaneously. Look, we actually really wanted to put that into Studio, and it's something that would have been a great feature. There's just some challenges around that as far as whether the hardware can actually handle that. So at this stage, it's probably not looking like it'll encode and decode at the same time, which kind of puts you back into that the 4K range, where this quad product, as Eamon was mentioning, will have bidirectional ports enabled on that very shortly, so that will do encoding and decoding at the same time. So from an architectural point of view, this one's designed from the ground up to support that.
Very cool. Yep. Very cool. Okay, let's move on then. I'm just a little bit conscious of time. To cameras, I guess, is the logical next place to go.
Sure. Well, did you want to start with, which one did you want to start with, Carl?
Well, let's do a quick overview of the range, starting bottom to top, shall we? I mean, we've done it for anyone who wants more information on the range of PTZ cameras. We did a fairly detailed live stream with Phil Lane, the head of UK sales for Bird Dog, on the PTZ range specifically a few months ago now. So I will link that down below to go back and watch that one if you want more information. But it would be great to get some of your maybe big picture thoughts on some of these and how you see them fitting together. And of course, the PF120 is now new.
Let's look at that. So I have that. Yeah, and thank you for the video you did on this, Carl, too. It was really, really great.
No problem.
So PF120 is in the market now, and it's basically our first foray into a non-PDZ. So we started selling PDZ cameras, pan, tilt, zoom, I keep saying Z. I'm living in the US world.
You've been
I can't help
some
it.
American meetings, right?
Yeah, just a few. Yeah, and so this is our first foray into a box camera. So it's a 20x optical zoom. It's got full NDI as you'd expect. That's PoE as well. It's got USB UVC. Oops, wrong side. Still on the wrong side. That side. USB UVC. So you can plug it in and use it as a webcam for Zoom, Teams, and things like that. HDMI output, as well as audio I/O. So that's in market now. It's got a big tele light on the front. And the really cool, one of the cool things about this is it's got a 49mm thread on the front. So you can attach a wide angle lens, or you could even attach filters like ND filters or polarizers or things like that. So and it's really tough. It's built out of one solid piece of aluminium. So it's really, really built tough for the road. And you've got your usual mounts on the bottom, quarter 20 inch, and a 3/8, as well as an anti-rotation pin.
I guess it being tough really does separate it from the rest of the lineup, because PTZ cameras are not known for being particularly tough, because funnily enough they've got a whole pan, tilt and zoom mechanism in there. And so we've got across the range we've got pan, tilt, zoom cameras starting sort of in the HD range, and then we've got them going right up to true broadcast high-end cameras that are I'm not sure in pounds, but they're about $8,000 with Sony Exmor 1-inch sensors. So we've sort of got something that fits in the range for everybody. Gotcha.
Yeah, I guess your point actually on the toughness, the two white cameras down the bottom are actually a really good example of where a PTZ can be tough. The A series cameras, which are our all-weather range, they're available. You can mount them anywhere in the world. They're designed to go from -40 to +60 degrees, so literally Antarctica to the Sahara. You can put one of these things. And they really are built tough. I haven't tried, but I reckon you could take a baseball bat to it and it would probably handle it pretty well.
Sounds like you want to try, though.
I would love to try actually one day, but the A300 in particular is designed to withstand Category 4 hurricanes. It's got a full 360-degree spin, so it's got a slip ring setup in there. It's a really tough camera, and even the housing, it's nitrogen filled, so it can't fog up in extreme conditions and everything. So we really do have ultra tough cameras if you need it in an extreme environment, and that extreme environment might just be you want to put it outside and not have to worry about rain and covering it up in enclosures and all that kind of thing. And then as you sort of go through that range, that the P4K, which is our top of the range as far as image quality, as Eamon mentioned, it's got that the Sony 1-inch sensor, so it really gives you really excellent image quality to be used in a studio type environment, and we've got some great customer use cases of that. And then going down through the range, we've got the smallest camera, the little P100, has been a great success story. We've had that used. It's actually being used with the NBA for ref cams and things. So it is actually used for broadcast in a number of different places, just owing to its size and the quality of it for the price. So.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's a super flexible camera, the P100. You can use it like I am for video conferencing, or you can use it for live-to-air broadcast. I was just thinking though, Dan, if you want to start hitting an A300 with a cricket bat, as long as I can film it and use it for marketing, I'm all for it. Let's do it.
There we go.
Well, it depends. As you might have noticed, we're in two separate locations because we've got a lockdown in Melbourne, so it makes it a little bit difficult for these interviews. But maybe a celebration coming out of the lockdown might be to record a video.
Yeah,
I look forward to seeing it.
I remember someone did that with a monitor. It was a small HD. They were like shooting it.
A bunch of people have. The classic is the phone cases. Every phone case manufacturer seems to drop it from a hot air balloon or run over it with a tank. But we have seen some in the industry, like small HD, doing it with their production monitors, with cricket bats. With broad grins on their faces. And what really struck me about that video was that it was the CEOs doing it as well. It wasn't some marketing team somewhere. It was them themselves going, no, we're doing it.
Yeah, someone's going to hit this thing or run over it in a truck. Yeah, that's going to be me.
Okay, cool. So that's the cameras, and like I said, we've got a much longer stream breaking down each one of those in turn and how to help pick between them and all the rest of it. And shall we lightly touch on some of the software and other bits and bobs that you've got here? I mean, the AV products I think maybe let's skip today in the interest of time, but I think the software is probably worth mentioning, some of this stuff.
Yeah, sure. So there's a few in there, but some of them are sort of the same. So we have routing software, audio intercom software, and then we have our cam control software, which I think actually let's highlight cam control as a starting point because it's really a unique way to control our cameras. So cam control gives you the ability to load up a PC that's on the same network as the cameras, remembering that their network's connected via NDI. And you can bring up all of the parameters of the camera in a really nice interface and a nice graphical interface. So you can change all the parameters. You can load up two side by side and then, match up the parameters to color match them and things like that. And it's a really powerful piece of software that often gets overlooked. So yeah, cam control is really cool. And it's completely free with all of our cameras. So did I miss anything on cam control that's worth mentioning, Dan? Because it is a really, it's sort of the front door to the cameras a lot of the time.
Look, I think it is, and probably all of these screenshots have got a little, all those beautiful colours, and it's something to highlight actually on all of our cameras. One thing we're really proud of is the whole range has got a thing called Color Matrix. So what you can do is jump in and, if you're tuning in a shot, and quite often if you've got some primary colours in a shot, it can be really hard to get them balanced right. So having that Color Matrix in an interface like cam control, you can just tune back a little bit on the reds, or we can adjust the hue of the red a little bit, or whatever you might want to do, and it becomes really interactive and allows you to really get that shot tuned into exactly as you want to use it. So I think cam control, being touch friendly, being real time, giving you those views, does give you a really good experience to be able to really tune in those cameras rather than poking around in a web user interface or an on-screen menu. It feels a lot more natural. So yeah, cam control does open up a lot of possibilities with cameras.
And without giving anything away, cam control's there's some big things coming, and they'll be free as well. So there's a little bit of a, a little bit of a throwaway line for you, but it won't be too far away. Very
nice. I look forward to it. So I think that's a fairly good place to wrap it up then for today. Have you guys got anything extra that you wanna just chuck in here right at the end?
Look, I think probably one last thing I will talk about is our cloud platform, which is sort of one of our software packages, and I won't talk too much about it. But essentially, it's a media delivery platform that is based around NDI. So if you've got a cloud endpoint or a piece of software running in your network, you can take any of your video sources that are on your network and publish that effectively anywhere. You can publish it to an RTMP or an RTMP stream. You can publish it over regular SRT that we mentioned before. So if we wanted to send an NDI stream to someone else that could accept SRT, we can do that directly within cloud. We have announced our Cloud Connect platform, which we mentioned a bit earlier as well, which is on an iPad you can receive your NDI stream anywhere in the world, or Apple TV or Android devices. But then we've also got this ability to do multi-stream traversal over the internet from one place to another. So with cloud, you can have multiple locations where you can see all of your cameras and all of your devices, and it effectively teleports all of those cameras to your other location. So it means that you have all of that control, PTZ control, tally lights, and everything can be handled remotely. So cloud really it allows you to take video in and out from almost any type of format that can be delivered to you or from you, and then interact with that in all sorts of different ways, whether that's on an iPad or whether it's on a broadcast system that accepts SRT. So it's a really powerful media processing platform.
Awesome. And a nice little Tesla mention there as well.
That's actually from Spaceballs. It's the same place that Elon Musk got it. If anyone's interested, I drop a lot of Easter eggs in our website. So there's a lot of song quotes and movie quotes and references to things like on the Flex page. I put a banana for scale, which is a Reddit tip of the hat. So there's all kinds of stuff in the website. I like to have a bit of fun. So.
I will look out for those. We've just had one more question from Alimox, who says, will there be at any point a camera meant to be operated on sticks by a user operator, not fixed or PTZ? Is that something that you guys are interested in doing? Well, I guess he means more like a traditional camera, like a camcorder-y type.
Sure, I understood. I was just being silly. So, Dan, you can answer that one.
No. Yeah, look, I think it's probably the best way to answer that is that NDI does change everything as far as how productions are done, and the more the time goes by, the more versions of NDI come along, the more people that are using NDI means that more devices will support it. And so, if you look at everything that you see at a trade show that has got an SDI connection in there, it's all just waiting to have an NDI connection at some point. So, I think you will see a lot of things happen. Whatever you can think of now, whether that's matrix switches, whether it's production cameras, all sorts of things will get NDI in there. As far as what we're talking about, as far as products, we don't have any announcements on production cameras. I think from our perspective, the PTZ camera market, certainly in this climate, is a really important place to be with distancing and remote studios and being able to remote control. So we've got a lot of plans on the PTZ range. So no announcements on production cameras, but I think it would be a logical step for production cameras to eventually get NDI into them. So, yeah.
Sure.
So I can't give you too much of an answer there, but well, that's true. Yeah,
absolutely.
You can bring your own camera.
Okay, right, let's wrap up there then, shall we? So thank you guys so much for your time. I really, really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to talk to us and answer our questions today. Thank you. I'll let you both go and enjoy your evenings now. So thank you very, very much for joining me.
Thanks very much, Carl. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. We really appreciate the support, and ProAV have been a big supporter of us for a long time, and we appreciate your videos. So yeah, thank you very much. We'll come on and talk anytime. So yeah,
absolutely. You are more than welcome. So thank you everyone for watching this. If you're watching this after the fact, just leave any questions that you may have down in the comment section down below, and we'll do our best to keep on track of those and answer them for you as quickly as possible. But yeah, that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
System that allows you to upgrade your in-camera audio with one button operation. With a variety of configurations to choose from, this entry point into the world of wireless will improve your workflow and will expand the possibilities of how you capture audio for your video. For more information, visit sennheiser.com/xswd.
The new Super 35 sensor that Canon have introduced with the C300 Mark III is quite a big step up from other S35 sensors that they have created before. From the body and the flexibility that gives us in terms of the expansion packs and the interchangeable mount, to the sensor with its increased dynamic range for tackling scenes that possibly we couldn't have tackled or captured faithfully